Practical Anarchy, A Guide to Self-Determination, Dickie Dredd. Section 69. Towards a Global Shift. The climate emergency makes it clear that capitalism's endless growth model cannot continue without catastrophic consequences. As we showed earlier, growth on a finite planet drives ecological collapse. We are already breaching planetary boundaries. Biodiversity loss, carbon emissions and resource extraction are destabilising the very conditions that make life possible. This crisis is more than an environmental concern, exposes the fundamental irrationality of a system that demands expansion regardless of planetary limits. An alternative lies in organised resource allocation around need, sustainability and collective decision making rather than profit. Here we might draw inspiration from earlier practices of commons governance and modern digital commons. Such systems could be scaled through federated resource councils, assemblies of communities and workplaces linked horizontally, combined with technological tools for coordination. This echoes Kropotkin's vision of decentralised cooperation, obtained for a networked world. As discussed, fusion energy is often raised as the holy grail of abundance. Pilot projects such as ITER, breakthroughs in initial confinement fusion at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, have rekindled optimism. If realised, fusion could provide the energetic backbone for a resource-based society, enabling automation, desalination and post-scarcity infrastructure. Yet, as we warned earlier, technology in the hands of states and corporations easily becomes a tool of domination rather than liberation. It's worth noting that since the rise of Trump, the National Ignition Facility has focused its efforts on weapons as opposed to energy production research. Case study: renewable energy transitions and their limits. Renewable energy is often presented as the obvious bridge towards a post-carbon, post-scarcity world. Sunshine and wind appear free, abundant and universally available, a potential material basis for the kind of resource-based society sketched out earlier. Small-scale off-grid systems already demonstrate how solar and wind can underpin autonomy, from traveller sites to community microgrids, but the wider story is far more contradictory. Germany's Eigenwende, energy transition, offers one example. Driven by anti-nuclear campaigns and climate targets, the state invested heavily in wind and solar. For a period, citizen-owned cooperatives and local energy collectives thrived, generating both electricity and a sense of empowerment. Yet over time, large utilities and corporate investors reasserted control, buying up projects and shifting subsidies towards centralised models. Result is an energy mix greener on paper, but still dominated by capitalist logics of profit and enclosure. In Denmark, community wind power shows another path. Here, early policy required that local residents co-own turbines, embedding energy within community life. This generated durable support and spread cooperative models around. But as markets expanded, the same processes of scale and capital concentration emerged, and many community stakes were diluted. Meanwhile, the global south pays the price for green technologies. Solar panels and wind turbines depend on rare earth minerals and metals extracted for environmentally destructive and exploitative mining. Communities in the Congo or Bolivia may find themselves locked into new forms of resource colonialism, mirroring the same north-south hierarchies already critiqued when we talked about capitalism's social costs. Green capitalism here risks reproducing the very inequalities it claims to solve. Renewables, then, are not inherently liberatory. They can underpin autonomy, as in traveller encampments or cooperative microgrids, or they can fuel new enclosures, monopolies and geopolitical struggles. The question, as always, is who controls the infrastructure and how it is embedded. For anarchists, the task is to insist that renewable energy be developed as commons, locally owned, federated and ecologically rooted, rather than handed over to the same corporations and states that profit from fossil fuel losses. Expansion, but planetary limits and population equity. Yet renewable energy alone cannot resolve the deeper issue, whether Earth's resources under climate crisis and population growth can sustain a comfortable life for all. Scientific assessments now suggest that 6 of the 9 planetary boundaries that regulate a stable Earth system have already been breached, including biodiversity loss, nitrogen and phosphorus cycles and freshwater use, with climate change accelerating all others. This means that the ecological space in which societies can flourish is shrinking. Population growth is often cited as the central problem, but this framing obscures the real issue. The wealthiest 10% of the global population are responsible for over half of greenhouse gas emissions, while billions live with barely enough energy for basic needs. A world of 10 billion could, in principle, live comfortably within ecological limits, but only if overconsumption in rich air regions is curbed and resources are shared equitably. Without redistribution, comfort for all will remain blocked, but not by absolute scarcity, but by political and economic arrangements. The climate crisis magnifies these tensions. Rising seas, collapsing soils, desertification and biodiversity decline threaten food and water security, especially in global south. As we illustrated earlier, capitalism's obsession with endless growth drives this crisis, while also mismanaging resources through waste, planned obsolescence and militarisation. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, has warned that unchecked warming will erode crop yields, reduce freshwater availability and amplify conflict over land and resources. These pressures make it essential to rethink not just energy supply, but the entire model of production, distribution and consumption. Seen in this light, the question of whether there is enough to go around is less about physical limits and more about societal organisation. Once we can get more people to realise we should not empower corporatists, governments to rule us, we can have larger and larger groups working outside the money power machine. Abundance already exists in energy flows, in food production, in human capacity to cooperate, but it is hoarded, misallocated or destroyed by states and corporations. The task is to recognise these flows around need and sustainability rather than profit. This is the bridge to the following discussion on obstacles and resistances, where the challenges of scarcity myths, repression and capitalism realism reappear in concrete form. Is there enough to go around? A key question is whether resources are truly sufficient for all, and whether human behaviour, often dismissed as greed, would prevent equitable distribution. Critics evoke the human nature argument, explored in earlier sections, suggesting that selfishness makes collective stewardship impossible. Yet anthropological evidence shows that for most of history people lived in cooperative arrangements where hoarding was discouraged. The persistence of commons, co-ops and mutual networks illustrates that trust and solidarity are as natural as competition. The obstacle is not innate greed, but institutions designed to reward accumulation. Scaling alternative systems will require both imagination and infrastructure. Federated councils could oversee regional resource distribution, while global coordination could emerge from networks of such councils rather than centralised states. Digital tools already allow vast, decentralised systems to operate without top-down command. Open source software and blockchain protocols provide glimpses of what might be possible when transparency and accountability are built in. In short, a global shift beyond money is not utopian fantasy, but a necessary response to ecological and social limits. Fusion and renewables may provide the energy. Cooperative institutions can provide the governance. What stands in the way is not scarcity, but the grip of entrenched systems of power. The challenge in cultivating the political will and cultural transformation needed to ensure that abundance, once achieved, is shared rather than hoarded.